This fly that I'm going to tie today is it's an articulated fly, and I build the articulated sections using some aluminum wire. You can use a lot of different materials. There are some that you can buy that are made out of stainless steel and work really well for putting the hook at the back of the hook, at the back of the fly. This particular style has us with the hook at the front. And what I'm doing is I'm putting bends in this aluminum wire so that the thread doesn't fall off when I put things on it.
For the iron fly tie contest. The iron fly, place them up.
And now I need to crimp that down a little bit further.
We have 20 packs. So come on up here, we have 20 packs.
And we're going to connect these together, and I'm going to use 20-pound mono to do the connection. So we need to put them in the vise. Let's get them locked up. And straighten it up a little bit. And then here's cut a section of this mono, and I'll form a loop with it. I like to use mono thread on this section, on these sections, because it doesn't show anything. I've worked with black thread on it, and the black thread tends to show the various connections and things. So the advantage of this is the thread disappears. So now we're gonna put the mono on and form the first loop on the tail section here. So we put it on one side and then tie it on the other. Make the loop about as big as we want it to be. And that's the major work on the first section. Now we put our material on. In this case, we'll use some marabou, but you can use all kinds of different material for any of these, including some of the I've done some with rabbit hair and spun the rabbit hair and used cross-cut rabbit hair. So there's just a lot of different approaches and a lot of different materials that can be put on these. If you got a fly that you like, you can make it articulated. Now, the advantage of the multiple articulations is that they tend to give a little bit more motion, I think, than just the single ones. The single ones been around for a while, and
help me sell some of it.
So this is just S-TAS, and again, you can use almost any material to cover up the shank and add the appearance that you want this fly to have. So you can see it when I come to the end. The advantage of the mono material is again that it doesn't show anything. It doesn't, and when we look at the fly, it won't show the segments as much as it would if we had some other color.
Lunch is officially served. The restaurant is open.
Just finish this off just like you do with a regular hook.
Anybody else want to get in on the
And we're ready to go. We'll put a little glue on there, and we'll move on to the next segment.
iron flies?
Now the next segment's going to be a little bit different, and because I need to put this one connected to it. So let's crimp this down again to keep our thread from sliding off. And this one's a little bit longer, and you can build, like I say, I've seen these up to 4 segments, and they really do increase a lot of motion. And one of the reasons I like to have motion in my flies is because that's a sense that fish experience. They have the ability to sense movement in the water, pressure waves. And so I like to make bigger flies heads and have them create waves and motion and pressure waves in the water that the fish can sense. So it should attract fish from further away. That's my philosophy anyway. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing. We build a loop over here. So I put this material on. Again, the 20-pound mono.
Okay, iron feather people. Here we go.
Okay, and now again, we form a loop here.
This is important instruction. Two things: directions to the men's room, and what you're going to do in the contest. First off, when I say go, you've got 30 minutes to tie this fly with the materials you were given. Kicker is 15 minutes into the tie, we're going to dump the
And we want this
material on.
tag up here in order to put this,
It's coming. Think about it. We don't know what it is.
in order to tie on our next, the link we just finished.
Talking to you. And remember, all the materials you pack have to be represented in the fly that you're tying.
You can see at the end the kind of motion that we get with this right away.
Is that it, Fred? 3, 2, 1, go.
All right.
Iron feather tying contest starts now.
Again, we wrap the assets on that for this segment, and the next segment will be we'll attach it to the hook. This, by the way, this spool is you buy that at Walmart. It's just their 5/1000 diameter mono thread, and it works really good. It's really strong, so it's great for fly fishing activities. Okay, we finish off this segment. Now, one of the materials that I've used on some of this is you can find at the flower shop. They have sections of wire that they use for wrapping flowers and building their formations, and that also works very well. But I found that this is 18 gauge aluminum. I found that the 18 gauge wire is just a little bit too stiff for me to deal with, so I go with I would go with 24 gauge on that. And again, it comes in various gauges, so find something that works well for you. Okay, now again, we need to put a piece of mono on here in order to connect up the pieces that we have right now. So this is the same action that you find when we do any of the single articulated flies. This is 8/0 thread that I use, and it just happens to what I like to use all the time. Works quite well for most applications. And so I just put that on, and at this one everything's going to be hidden, so I don't need to worry about using the mono. So it won't show up when we put material over the top of it. I like to put a bead in here at this point in order to keep the tail from wrapping around the hook too much. Again, this is just a glass bead that we put on, and then we put on the segments that we've made, thread it through the glass bead again, and then tie it down. And I like to pull that so that, again, I'm looking for the motion that I want to have, and just make sure that this doesn't wrap too much around. You find a lot of folks when they do articulated flies, they'll put 3 beads on there, and I found that mine worked pretty well with this configuration with just 1. And again, a lot of people a lot of folks in the process of building articulated pieces, the shanks, they will often just cut the hook off at this point and use this portion, the part of the shank. But I prefer to make mine out of the aluminum. So put on a little more Estes here and see if we can avoid cutting off the hook. Just wrap it forward. Now I'm not going to wrap it all the way forward because I'm going to put on what I call a spreader.
See if you need to raise it to the items you want.
So we'll get at this point. We'll tie that off, and we'll build a little spreader that will spread the material that we're gonna stack on here. And we just sort of paper everything around. This is easy body. And again, you can buy it at any of the fly shops and online suppliers. We cut a section of it about 1 inch or so, and then I put it on and tie it down at this point. And I'm going to form a cone with this, and that's what the big advantage is. It's like a spreader. There are a lot of different ways of spreading the material we're going to put on. One is to tie bucktail on in the reverse direction, and then push it back. And the other is to just use some of the Estes or chenille and build it up a little bit there. Just something to make that material that we're going to add on to spread out a little bit, because again, like I say, my belief is that the fish will sense the motion. All right, now we're ready to make the cone. We push it back like that, and then add some material here, add our thread, and form the cone. And now what we're going to do, if you can see, we got the cone set up. We're going to begin to add material around it, and that forms the shape of our fly. It's great for mullet flies, shad flies. They look really good.
Don't forget iron feather.
Okay, now let's use some material. The material I'm using in this case is Ultra Wing, but you can use any material that covers it. For the bigger flies, I've used Icelandic sheep wool and anything that you like to cover it up with. You know, Puglisi fur works. Puglisi material works well as well. So this, I just find that by sectioning it like this, I get to the right length. And I turn it over. I'm going to have my white section under here. So we'll make the bottom of the fly. Getting it around the hook sometimes is a hassle. So all we're doing is just adding material around this cone that we formed. And you find as much of it around as I want. I find that I like to have the white sections go up about halfway. So we seem to have accomplished that this time. If you don't get it where you want it, just add a little bit more material. It's that easy. So we just take a little bit of this and put it in here, and we can change the coloring and the shape of it. All right, then we'll put a little our contrasting material for the top of the fly. And several of my favorite colors, obviously, are the chartreuse colors work well. I also do this fly in blue quite often. So again, we put this on fairly light. I don't want a lot of material on it. I want the fly to be light and fairly big.
Upstairs in the conference room now. You know, somebody signed up for it.
We're building our top section here. You spread it around a little bit with our fingers and make sure that it covers about what we want it to. And again, what we're interested in is what I'm interested in here is this a light fly has the right profile for what I'm looking at, and not a lot of material. Get this kind of a see-through look that it has. So you can see we're beginning to get there. Now I need one more piece of contrast to work on that, and there's always this famous material, which is peacock herl. It works really good and gives the right kind of contrast for this particular fly. And if I do it in blue, I usually use another blue material like the Ultra Wing. Just cut this off. Put it on. We're getting there. We're getting there. And we're finished with the thread work now, so we can put our final head on here and do our whip finish. And I always like to do a couple of these guys. And I want to add a little shape to that peacock curl. I want it to curl around a little bit.
Here's three ingredients. It's coming now. All right, guys, if you're in the iron feather contest, come up and pick up the package of the mystery material now. We have it up here.
Yeah, we still got one sticking up here.
No, it's gorilla armpit. Natural.
There's other material.
Okay, we need to put some glue on the front.
All right, guys, come and get it. In 15 minutes, and we're closing down the assignment option and the raffle for the morning, and then we'll reload and have an entire afternoon and go through it all over again.
And then we want to put on some eyes. I like the eyes again. I think it's important to show motion, create pressure, and these eyes have the advantage of adding just a little bit of noise as well. So sometimes on this fly, I even have put rattles inside of it. So there's so much you can do with this particular style of fly. One of the things, because I have a cone under there, this actually forms a pretty good bond, so they tend to stay on much better than a lot of other flies that we put on unless you coat them up. And that's it.